Julian, the newly appointed director of modernization, whose primary management strategy consisted of repeating Silicon Valley buzzwords while wearing impeccably tailored suits, decided that my 2 decades of maintaining the Aegis customs matrix was merely an outdated redundancy. Standing in the center of the bustling maritime control room, he loudly declared that my highly specialized role could be easily absorbed by an entry-level data analyst, pointing at a trembling new hire named Chloe as my immediate replacement. I didn't bother trying to explain that the Matrix wasn't just a basic software program, but rather a fragile living ecosystem of international trade agreements, legacy harbor codes, and cryptographic handshakes that I had manually balanced since the early 2000s. Instead, I calmly unclipped my secure access badge, placed it gently beside my cold cup of coffee, and walked out of the glass-walled command center without a single word of protest, leaving my stunned colleagues staring in absolute silence. The drive back to my quiet suburban home was accompanied only by the rhythmic hum of my tires against the coastal highway, wrapping me in a strange, serene quiet that felt like the eye of an approaching hurricane. I knew perfectly well that Julian was currently celebrating his hollow victory, completely oblivious to the terrifying reality that handing over the labyrinthine maritime compliance network to an untrained novice was akin to tossing the launch keys of a nuclear submarine to a teenager. When the original software developers went bankrupt 15 years ago and left our global shipping routes vulnerable to catastrophic international embargoes, I spent countless sleepless nights weaving a authorization framework to keep our massive freight moving legally across 60 different sovereign borders. Because the underlying architecture was notoriously unstable, it required a legally binding encrypted signature from a designated master custodian to continuously validate every single cargo manifest, a vital security title that only I held in the Global Maritime Registry. Upon reaching my house, I deliberately ignored the frantic messages already illuminating my personal smartphone, bypassed my living room entirely, and booted up the heavily encrypted workstation I kept hidden in my secured home office. Recognizing that my official employment had been abruptly terminated, I was legally obligated by international maritime law to sever my personal cryptographic keys from the Central Harbor Matrix, a crucial administrative ritual I executed with meticulous precision and a surprisingly calm heart. By initiating the formal severance command, I wasn't acting out of spite or seeking some petty revenge against an arrogant boss, but rather following the strict, federally mandated protocols that I had written myself to prevent the unauthorized ghost routing of commercial freighters. The terminal screen flashed a brilliant crimson before displaying a final warning that the master custodial token had been successfully nullified, quietly activating an irreversible 48-hour countdown to a total automated maritime logistics lockdown. The very next morning, while Julian was cheerfully handing out impossible assignments and boasting to the executives about streamlining the department's workflow, Chloe encountered a bizarre authentication firewall that absolutely refused to accept her standard managerial overrides. She stared in mounting horror at a cascading screen of access denied prompts, desperately trying to comprehend why the ancient system was demanding a level 7 biometric clearance that Julian 7 arrogantly insisted was just a deprecated glitch from an obsolete era. By Tuesday afternoon, the company's chief operations officer noticed a massive backlog of unverified shipping manifests piling up in the Atlantic sector, triggering an automated internal alert that warned of imminent customs freezes across the entire eastern seaboard. Into Julian's meticulously organized office, demanding an immediate explanation for the sudden logistics bottleneck, to be met with arrogant dismissals and empty promises that the new modernization team would definitely patch the supposed software hiccup by the end of the day. Gravity of the situation finally breached the executive suites when the legal department received an urgent automated inquiry from the International Maritime Organization questioning why the company's registered compliance officer had suddenly vanished from the secure global registry. The lead corporate counsel frantically reviewed the quarterly audit requirements, turning exceptionally pale when she realized that without my actively verified cryptographic signature on the daily ledger, every single cargo core ship operating under our corporate flag was effectively doing so illegally. Exactly 48 hours after I clicked that fateful red button in the quiet solitude of my home office, the Aegis Customs Matrix hit the end of its programmed grace period and enacted its ultimate defensive posture against what it perceived as a total security compromise. Across the globe, massive loading cranes ground to an automated halt, port customs portals automatically rejected all incoming bills of lading, and billions of dollars worth of international freight became permanently stranded in digital purgatory because the system no longer recognized the company's legal authority to move them. Absolute panic swept through the corporate headquarters like a wildfire as Julian desperately ordered the internal IT department to hack into their own servers, screaming at exhausted engineers who were utterly powerless against military-grade encryption that strictly required my specific clearance. The smug confidence he had worn so proudly during my public dismissal evaporated entirely, replaced by the terrified, sinking realization that he had just inadvertently paralyzed a multinational corporation by carelessly tossing away the one invisible person who kept its mechanical heart beating. My personal phone finally began to ring with frantic, nonstop persistence, displaying rapid-fire calls from the panicked COO, desperate legal representatives, and eventually the increasingly hysterical Julian himself, all begging for a miraculous backdoor fix to save their sinking corporate ship. I simply let the desperate calls roll over to a polite, automated voicemail message detailing my extraordinarily high new independent consulting rates, deeply enjoying the quiet irony that my supposedly replaceable skills were now the absolute only thing standing between the arrogant executives and total financial ruin. The chaotic internal chat logs my former loyal colleagues dutifully forwarded to me out of sheer solidarity painted a disastrous picture of emergency board meetings, rapidly plummeting stock values, and a newly humbled director of modernization facing immediate and highly public termination. Chloe, the terrified junior analyst who had been unfairly thrust into an impossible technical situation, was mercifully reassigned to a much safer department once the furious executives finally understood that the international catastrophe was entirely born of Julian's staggering managerial incompetence. As I sat on my sunlit patio, watching the neighborhood birds flutter around a wooden feeder with a warm cup of herbal tea in hand, I felt a profound sense of validation knowing that I had never needed to fight back to vigorously prove my inherent worth to the foolish people who had so deeply underestimated me. The intricate digital fortress I had painstakingly built and protected for so many years simply did exactly what it was perfectly designed to do, quietly demanding the massive respect it deserved while I comfortably prepared to negotiate the most lucrative independent contracting deal of my entire professional career. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.